And there are new concerns tonight of an escalating conflict between the U.S. and Venezuela. Reports tonight of Venezuelan military aircraft flying over a U.S. Navy destroyer for a second time in 2 days. It all started with the U.S. military carrying out a strike on a boat the White House says was operated by the drug cartel Tren de Aragua. They are designated as a terrorist organization. In response, 2 Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets whizzed past a U.S. Navy destroyer on Thursday. Today, the U.S. sending 10 F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico. We haven't seen this type of military buildup in the Caribbean since the Cuban Missile Crisis. President Trump warning today if Venezuela were to fly over U.S. Navy vessels again.
When I see boats coming in like loaded up the other day with all sorts of drugs, probably fentanyl mostly, but all sorts of drugs, and we're going to take them out. And if people want to have fun going on the high seas or the low seas, they're going to be in trouble.
First, we go to NewsNation's Libby Dean live outside the White House for us tonight. Libby, what are you hearing?
Hey, good evening, Kelly. The website and all of the department's branding quickly changed to the Department of War, but legally it does still remain the Department of Defense. Now, the Defense Secretary, which we're now referring to as the War Secretary, described today's executive order as a, quote, vibe shift at the department he leads, suggesting the name War Department actually conveys a more appropriate title for the Pentagon's operations. Here's the president tonight in the Rose Garden at that Rose Garden Club event you just detailed.
It was called Department of War. And then we went woke after the Second World War incredible victory, and we said, let's change it to defense. And look, war means something. It means we're not going to have any problems. We don't want problems with people. And I've kept us out of wars. I've solved wars.
Earlier today in the Oval Office, President Trump said that he was unsure if Congress needs to ultimately codify this name change, but of course they do. And it doesn't seem like this will actually be any kind of challenge, though, because we have heard several Republican senators say they are on board with this name change that was announced today. Now, today's rebrand announcement does come as the U.S. is ramping up its fight against drug cartels. Tuesday, the U.S. struck a vessel that was allegedly carrying drugs with ties to the Venezuelan cartels, and the Pentagon confirmed today it's deploying 10 F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico. This, of course, all part of those efforts by the Trump administration to fight cartels in the region. Now, the White House was set to brief some senators about what I just described there, those fighter jet deployments and the threat from Venezuela. That briefing was expected today, but our colleague Joe Khalil learned that briefing has now been postponed to this coming Tuesday, Kelly.
Yeah, interesting that was canceled at the last minute, but we'll be eager to see what they learn next week. Libby Dean live at the White House for us tonight. Thank you. And with us now is retired Brigadier General Peter Zwack and former U.S. Defense Attaché to Russia, fellow at the Wilson Center Global, and Glenn Ignazio, retired Air Force Special Operations Commander, Defense Intelligence Technology Innovator. So my first question really to you both, and Glenn, we could start with you. What are these F-35s for that the president ordered down there to Puerto Rico today?
Absolutely. So the Navy craft that have down there have the capability to defend themselves against fighters like this. But at the same time, those are missile systems. So if something happened, they would fire. But the idea of putting the aircraft down there is going to give them sort of air cover. They're going to be able to intercept these aircraft and keep them away from the ships. So that's sort of a deterrence, and also keeping them at bay so they wouldn't be within striking distance of the ships themselves. I don't believe a carrier's down there. And this is that top cover, air to air, that would be provided by the F-35s.
And what do you think, Peter?
Well, first of all, the F-35 is an extraordinary aircraft. And while the Venezuelan F-16s produced by us are great aircraft in their own right, they can't match an F-35. I think just it's a message. And with the F-35, you immediately assert air superiority down there. And there are what, 10 of them going down there. So, I mean, that's a pretty serious deployment.
Yeah, and the president today, as we just heard, he was clear that any further Venezuelan approaches against the U.S. Navy would not be tolerated. We just heard him talk about that. So what does this mean in terms of concern over some sort of escalating conflict between the U.S. and Venezuela? Peter, I'll throw it to you there.
Yes, I mean, anytime you have a lot of hardware flying and hot words. I mean, there's a lot of anger out there in the airways, especially from Maduro, and from our side, we're aggressive, and you get incidents that you can't plan. We would say in the military, you expect the unexpected. And in an environment like this, there are many different scenarios. And not just the aircraft, but we have, 10 ships in the area. So there's just a lot of stuff that can go wrong, even though our military is superb.
Yeah. And Glenn, how much could President Trump do here without congressional approval as this moves forward?
Well, as far as being able to deploy the Navy and stay again at the high seas, there's a lot of things that are going into play about this strike and people talking about legalities and so forth. Well, first of all, they've been identified as a terrorist organization, which gives the ability to actually take those targets out, similar to that we've seen in Iraq, Yemen, and other places in the world. Now, being on the high seas, we also, as the United States, are not a signatory to the UN Convention of Law of Sea. Now, those are some things that protect vessels and stuff at sea, but because we're not a signatory to that, we're not really coming into that. So the idea that there's a direct threat with the fentanyl, I think it's the #1 killer from 17 to 25-year-olds in America, that this is a clear threat, so they took the attack to take those individuals out. That is very much of a deterrence to prevent people from using the oceans again to try to smuggle in any kind of drugs. It does get complicated going forward because are they going to use human shields? Okay, there's a lot of various things here. But the idea with the ships, the intelligence that they're able to provide both with the ships electronically and the human intelligence assets are really going to be incredible here. The F-35s are also not just a stealthy aircraft that can get in without being detected in some places, but they're very part of this network to be able to detect these type of threats and be able to either bring something to bear on them and pull the trigger, or even smarter, not to pull the trigger. So it's both ways. So I think that us being in there in the high seas, of course, which we are all protected just like anybody else, is the right way to operate and literally put that fence line out there to defend against any particular. And these drug cartels really are a threat.
And I was curious, too, because a lot of our attention, especially when we've been at the White House, a lot of questions on Russia, Ukraine, Iran. I just asked last month the president about the rumors that the U.S. troops would be sent to take on the cartels. I wanted to play that here, and we'll talk on the other side.
We're talking about sending military forces to fight against the drug cartels in Latin America. Do you think it's worth sending our forces, our U.S. forces there to take this on?
Cartels where?
Central Latin America.
Well, Latin America's got a lot of cartels. They've got a lot of drugs flowing. So, we want to protect our country. We have to protect our country. We haven't been doing it for 4 years. And we love this country like they love their countries. We have to protect our country. So, we're playing a tough game, but we'll have more to say about that soon.
So, Peter, are we stretching our forces too thin here?
Well, it certainly, it could be if this thing ramps up even more so. I think following the example with Marco Rubio, the sextate, and President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico, they have kind of worked an agreement where the Mexicans are going to take the main effort. And we've agreed not to impose, if you will, ourselves on Mexican territory. I think that in the Caribbean, we just have to be careful in how we do project, that we don't somehow get perceived as the aggressive gringo up there. While obviously doing a very, very important mission in taking out these cartels.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but I hope we do catch up again on this soon as we continue to follow where this goes next. Glenn Ignazio and Brigadier General Peter Zwack, thank you both so much for joining us on this Friday night.
Thank you, both of you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.